Hi everyone and welcome to the Senses. This is our first hybrid event ever and we are so excited to be here. I am Anu, one of the founders and the other community developer of Metropolia Entrepreneurship Society. We are a brand new community under Metropolia University of Applied Sciences and we aim to greet every idea with enthusiasm. You can find more info about us on our website metes.metropolia.fi. So let's get started. If you have any questions here live, please raise your hand and I will come to you and say your question out loud. And if you have any questions through the stream, please type them in the live chat and we will ask them whenever possible. Yes, so Ben, off to you then.
Yes, and just quickly, my name is Ben. I'm one of the other community developers at Metropolia Entrepreneurship Society. And today we have Päivi and Salla speaking to us today about public speaking. So Päivi has 20 years of experience in international work of cross-cultural communication in conflict management and dialogue. And Salla is a non-fiction writer, journalist, and activist with years of experience in public speaking. So for those who have joined us today and those that are joining us from live stream, please sit back, enjoy, and without further ado, let's give Päivi and Salla a warm welcome. So, please.
Thank you very much. This was a very nice introduction and great to be here. So I think that we have already introduced, but I would like to introduce Salla again as a friend and what she has been doing. She has written at least 4 books. And her interests are going from antibiotics to dingo and more important people in our society in terms of art and culture and a lot of other things. In addition, she is interested in speaking and writing about issues which are very taboo. And I think that this would be interesting for all of you to ask questions from Salla. So, welcome Salla.
Thank you. Actually, our first slide was this innovative. So yeah, definitely. And I would like to say a few words about Päivi too. We met actually in Bangkok last year, where I was doing a fellowship with the Rotary International as a peace fellow studying peace and conflict resolution. So Päivi was one of our distinguished teachers. And she has lived in places like Tasmania, Sweden, Yemen, Kosovo. She has led big civil crisis management missions and done many things with both military and civilians, and has been to very tricky places. Talking about when we prepared this lecture, one of the things we discussed was that we have both been in situations where other people prepare speeches for us, or we have to write speeches for other people. And I was asking you, how was it? And you told me you had a horrible experience in Kosovo. Tell me about that.
Yes, it's always the thing is that when you are leading a big group, so you're very busy. And obviously, what we are going to tell you, we don't always do. So what happened was that I was given a speech written by somebody about the gender issues. And I had not looked at it before. I was in the car on the way to the place where it's in the mountainous place where exactly the gender issues are not that easy to deal with. And I found out that the speech was not what I wanted to deliver. And I had exactly an hour to redo it. So what is the lesson learned is to be very close to speechwriters and also to know and do your work beforehand. So that was my experience when you really fail. Of course, it was not my best speech ever, as you can imagine.
Yeah. I had to write a speech when I moved to Tajikistan as a young professional, and I was working for the mission for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and my boss was a Russian diplomat. And I had been there for 2 days when he says, write me a speech for the International Press Freedom Day. And my background is in journalism, so it wasn't like an impossible task, but I had no clue of what he actually wanted to say, and he had no intention to tell me. So, I mean, my first public speech was basically based on guessing. But since the guy was nice, and Russians usually like us Finns, we'll get back to this later, I got away from that pretty easily. But I would say it's pretty horrible to write speeches for other people, because you have no idea what the person actually wants to say. I mean, even if you represent a big diplomatic organization, still, I mean, you're a personality and you have your own angles that you want to take. So it's pretty unfair from you to not to have shared any of that.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a lesson learned is that the speech writer and speech deliverer needs to be very close to each other. And another thing is that when it goes with a lot of hands, through a lot of hands, the speech, it loses its edge. So that's something what needs to be looked at, and there's a lot of stories about the way the big presidents and big people have then in the end changed the speech according to the feeling in the room.
Yes, and further, like today, we'd like to share with you some tips on how to prepare and how to become a public speaker. We won't be giving you a one grand speech. I mean, if we had one, we'd be selling it elsewhere. But we're giving our best knowledge on what to do and how to do it, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of it. And please send your questions. We'll be happy to take the questions as we move along with our talk. Point one, pretty understandable. Who are you and why are you speaking here? I have been speaking in Pentagon about Russia, in Finnish Public Library about corruption. I've talked about corruption to municipal lawyers. I've talked about sex to the National Theatre audience. So obviously, every time you start preparing, you have to think, why did they invite me? Why did they not invite somebody else? What is it that I can give to these people tonight? And talking about the grand speech, I think even if you come up with a really good text that you can use, I mean, you can only use it once. Even if you are a regular speaker, regularly invited speaker, I think it's disrespectful to your audience to repeat the same things over and over again. Even if you're Martin Luther King, you can do your I have a dream speech only once. So the bad news is that if you want to become a public speaker, you're going to have to keep on practicing and creating a new speech every time you go somewhere. Point two, Päivi.
So now you have been asked to deliver a speech, and you have now accepted to speak. So principally, you now know why you are in that particular room or that particular podium. But now you need to know who you're speaking to. And what is who are your audience? And that's why it is really funny to be here tonight, because we don't see you actually. Who are you over there? So this is a new situation, and I think that this is also something what this new normal is going to teach us. How are we going to reflect with each other when we don't see each other? So one way to do this is, of course, is that you think that you are in the birthday party. And you have now people from all around the world came to your birthday party. And now how are you going to make the speech? And how are you going? They don't know each other. This is like a little bit like the wedding problem. That you have a lot of people who don't know each other. How are you going to? And oftentimes these type of speeches, they don't get to the audience. Somebody is already sleeping, somebody is already talking, so how do you get this to be done? And my experience is that one way to do is that we do it together. So you allow people to participate in your speech. But on the top of that, you need to get them to do something together. My beautiful experience from my own birthday party was that they were blowing soap bubbles. And there were a lot of balloons. So people were active, and while they are active, across the cultures, so that it doesn't matter whether you are from China or from US or Russia or Yemen, you all do the same thing. And hence you kind of, and you have already kind of, you know what is coming out. So that's the way you bring people in to the room and you get them excited. And this model, you can utilize it in different ways, in different sensitive situations. But you can also think that you are in the difficult situation, for example, in your company, something got missing, obviously somebody stole something. How are you going to now to talk to these people and try to get them to understand so that you don't hang yourself? And this is another very sensitive topic in order to not to accuse anybody, and how do you bring in? And what I recommend is that you discuss with your staff beforehand. Before you go and deliver your speech, you will test your ideas with your staff members. This is one of my experiences where I have been when the oil got stolen. Because there is always the danger that what you're going to do in that kind of sensitive situation, that you actually reveal who is your whistleblower. And that's a very difficult situation. So oftentimes the best way to engage audience is to make sure that you have already engaged them beforehand. So, or you have, if you have to go to do the lecture, one way to deal with the issue is that you take a pause and you watch to understand who is actually in the room and who is not in the room. Because you know beforehand, like Salla was telling that we were in the same classroom together, you know already beforehand who is supposed to be there. And if it's 25 students all around the world and 2 are missing, it's already a big percentage. So you can, by taking pause, you understand, why these 2 are not here. And once you start talking, obviously there are a lot of politics in the room, people start to radiate. And you need to be calm enough to allow that radiation to come in. And that's something which this new normal, where we are now, doesn't allow us to do. So we cannot now know who are there behind the cameras and what people are feeling about.
Yeah, I would call it the new abnormal. Exactly when I was talking to the municipal lawyers, I have 45 lawyers, and I'm on Zoom, and I have the headphones and the mic, and I see nothing, I hear nothing, and I talked on stream for 45 minutes, and that's like the most horrible experience of public speaking ever. And and I have no way of knowing if it was horrible, if it was interesting, if it made any sense, because I saw no one. But they paid me, so I guess it was okay. So so obviously, who are you speaking to? But then we go to rule number 1, know your topic. I mean, this is interesting, especially for me, because I've been doing very different things and talking in very different places. And the things I've been talking about are things like, sexuality, Russia, journalism. And I mentioned these 3 things because these are things that everyone knows everything about. I say journalist, media, you have an opinion, you say, oh, media lies, media is bad quality, media this, media that. I say sex, I say people are not necessarily naturally monogamous. People go, oh, no, that's a lie, that's biology, the traditional nuclear family is the only way to organize family life. That's what you get. Russia, everyone knows everything about Russia. People say Russia is run by Putin and Putin alone. And so when you go and talk about these topics, you're going to have to face people telling you their things. Especially, if you're younger than me and female, that's 100%. I'm reaching the age where people do that less, thanks God. But you can be sure that you face objection. So knowing your topic means that you also know you have the science, you have the facts behind you. You can argue if someone confronts you in the audience. So you really know, you know what to expect, and you know what you're talking about very deeply and profoundly.
But Salla, how about if you get a very cynical question? Somebody, because oftentimes when people ask you questions, they are very like, I'm sorry, but this is how it is. So how do you react to this kind of cynicism and the way I know it all type of people?
This takes me back to my youth. When I started in journalism, I specialized in Russia, and I went to Moscow in 1996, and that was a very interesting time to live in Russia. And I did my master's based on that, so I was studying Russian media and the changes that took place after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I came back and wrote my thesis and thought that this is the most interesting thesis in the whole world. And then I speak about it at my university in Tampere, and there's this older male professor and says, I don't understand why anybody would study Russian media. And that was, at that point, I got really mad. I was like so angry. I was thinking, because I felt like I'm doing important work, and there's this guy who says it's nothing, and he's a professor. But if I was in the same situation now, and I am regularly, I don't think you have to face cynicism with cynicism. Actually, the best weapon against it is that you actually show compassion and interest to the person that asks the question. You're like, why do you think so? Could you open up this a little bit? And why do you think this isn't important? And why do you oppose my point of view? Like in Finland, another example, because I often talk about corruption, and in Finland we think there's no corruption, and that's a total lie. Of course there's corruption in every society, and every Finn knows how it works in this country. We all do know. So when I talk to politicians, they often like to say, look, there's no corruption in Finland. They do it because they don't want to fund the anti-corruption work. And I'm not going to go deep into this because it would take another 45 minutes easily. But you have to face these arguments constantly and all the time. And the best way is just not just knowing, but also listening to the other person's point of view, because behind that cynical or negative comment, there's all an experience and emotion and hidden agendas, hidden feelings that could be personal, professional, money, power, anything behind those. So just, when someone's cynical, just give it a big smile.
Yes, and that leads us to the prepare and practice. That nothing beats this. The very fact, you need to have your facts right. And I can expect that somebody say, but how are we now this post-factual world then? We come to that, we come to talking about emotions soon. But prepare and practice is a good example for all of us who wants to be in the business, is to go to the interview. And if you go to the interview where you have multicultural interview panel, you know how difficult it is, and especially now when we are having them all in Zoom or whatever system. And I think that this is the one of the ultimate way of understanding how do you communicate is when you read your own CV, and you decide how you want to present yourself to somebody who has read your CV already, who knows exactly facts and pulse what you have written there, but what else you have to bring in the table. So that is one of those things which you can practice. You can practice it with a mirror, but you can practice like a mock interview with your friends. But another thing which happened to me recently is that how do you feel about people who are in the room interviewing you? How are you feeling that they are burnt out? Is this company burnt out? Or is this company one of these innovative future companies? Is there the energy coming out that you can feel that we are actually talking in the same level? So I think that this is another very interesting point where you can kind of see how do you prepare and practice. Another one which they always ask is motivation. What is your motivation? Why are you applying for this job? You know this in advance. But why are you not preparing? I have been interviewing hundreds of people in my life. And always the motivation is the point where people are, So you don't know why you came here, and you knew that I'm going to ask you this question. So these are the type of things, and especially when you know that your audience is going to be multicultural. You need to think, who are they? What are their politics? And I don't mean, it doesn't matter what is the area, what you're talking about. Whether you're talking about what kind of business, or whether you are in a state organization, or who is your client. The question is, I mean by politics, by thinking where these people are coming from, how they understand the world. Because the same question, it comes over and over again, is that if you don't understand the surroundings where you're speaking, as for example now, it is not maybe exactly the best time to go to Paris to talk about with a long period and obvious signs of Islam to kind of start talking about how Islam functions. Or otherwise, it's not exactly time to go to Bangladesh to tell how important the French values are. At least in the public. Because you know already that maybe you don't maybe get heard as the way you do. So once again, understand the surroundings where you're talking and prepare and practice. See how you look like when you do it. For example, the interview, in what you're preparing, you can easily do a lot of good things and good stories to involve yourself. What did I do right before? Think about the stories, what you have done. We all have done stories, by the way. In Finland, oftentimes we feel that we've never done any stories. So if your life is so boring that there's nothing to talk, no stories, tell a story about being boring. But tell the story. That's the important thing, is to kind of understand how do you take examples into your speech. How do you go around and try to kind of be unique, to be yourself and say, hey, this is me and I have done these things. So, and once you get it done, prepare and practice. Find the kind of a solid story line and practice. One of the good ways to, by the way, to practice is to go to the theater. Go to theater and go a lot to the theater. Listen to your relatives or mom or friend or somebody. Everyone has one person in their lives who is funny or who has these quotes for life. Start writing them down and using them. Because they are unique. They're stories. My mom tells the stories all the time, how we used to say this and we used to say that. But it's all our family story. So those are the type of things that I say that prepare and practice. Prepare in the way that you look unique and practice all the time. You can practice. And by the way, never say no when you have a chance to speak.
Yes, exactly. That's what you should do. If somebody asks you to speak in a wedding or in a funeral, you're going to hate it, but you should do it. If you want to become a public speaker, you're going to have to go and speak wherever it's possible. It's going to be horrible. You're not going to be very good in the beginning. I've done this a million times, and I don't think I'm always very good. In the beginning, I would write everything down, and I would speak it and kind of like try to remember it by heart. This gives you sort of like a backbone when you panic. You're going to panic too. I mean, we get to dealing with failure later. But as time goes by, it becomes easier and easier. My best education on public speaking was when I went to a stand-up comedy course. For the simple reason that that's the ultimate experience of shame. You know, when you write 5 minutes of stand-up and you think you're really funny, and you go give it to strangers, nobody laughs. And that's where you really literally want to die. But that's also like the best practice ever, because in most situations you don't have your aim is not to make everyone roar of laughter, but your aim is something else. But if you're a fan of stand-up, go and watch and check the rhythm of those things. I mean, those people that are really good at it, they look as if they just come and speak and it comes naturally, but it's decades of practice. So that's really, and plus you get the understanding how the funny little events in life turn into good public speaking. Like if you're boring, you can say, you know, following my life is like watching a paint dry. That's already kind of funny. So you can also steal other people's things. You should keep on stealing when you prepare for public speeches. And yeah, here we come to reading your audience. As we've already said many times before, you have to understand what you're doing and be sensitive. I mean, it's really different to talk to a group of religious activists than to some other group of people. So of course you have to understand where you are. There's this field of psychology, I guess, called neurolinguistic programming that somebody might have heard of. And they think that people perceive the world in 3 different ways. Some of us are visual, others are kinesthetic, and the rest are auditory. That means that some of us pay more attention to how things look like. Others are more interested in hearing and the things that come through, I mean, the sounds, the background noises, and things like that. And the third is like the smells, the atmosphere, the feeling. And really good public speakers can combine this all. I mean, I already mentioned the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech, which is online for everyone to read if you haven't already. And you will see that he refers to spaces, he refers to smells and feelings, he refers to colors and visuals. So this is the way to do it if you are dealing with large audiences that you don't necessarily know about. If you have a smaller group of people, you can already target it more. If you know that this person is really visual, you can add things, you can describe things in visual ways for him or her. So there are many tips that you can do. I'm going to share you a story of how I was like really insensitive. I was working in Georgia, in Tbilisi. Maybe you know where that is. It's this wonderful country by the Black Sea, between Turkey, Iran, Russia, in the South Caucasus. And I was running an office there, and everyone else was Georgian, and then there's me, the Finn. And often in multicultural settings, people find me really motionless, that my face is kind of stony, and I have no expressions, and nobody knows what I'm thinking. And we had staff meetings every Monday. And talking about visual perceptions of reality, I'm talking about auditory perceptions of reality. They would shout all through the staff meetings. It made no sense. It was just this constant mat of shouting, in Georgia.
With all due respect for Georgians, all the Georgians.
Yes, I love Georgians, and Georgians know it. But so once when and of course nothing ever came out of those meetings because everyone was shouting. So I just got up, and then I slammed the door so hard that I almost broke the windows in the room. So what happens after that? All the Georgians run after me in a line. Salla, 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 Salla. They come after me, and they were like in a shock. So how could the Finn all of a sudden like explode like this? So, this was a story of insensitivity, but in that particular case, it did work, because after that, our staff meetings made much more sense. But don't use this method too often. So, did I have a question on that for you? No. So yes, we were already talking about rhythming the speech and quotes. If one of you was looking to get some concrete tips on how to construct a speech, here they are, so enjoy them. Here are 3 quotes from famous books. I would be so happy if somebody knew without Googling, but I don't expect you to. First one goes, "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." That's the beginning sentence of Anna Karenina book by Leo Tolstoy. And I'm telling you, it's very handy, because you can change the word family with many other things. You can say, happy countries are all alike, every unhappy country is unhappy in its own way, and so on and so forth. This is I've been seeing this used in journalism and other places. So this is I recommend you to keep this in mind. The second one is more literary. Says, so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. This would work more on American audience. This is the last sentence of Francis Scott Fitzgerald's book, The Great Gatsby. And it's supposed, I guess, to describe how we sort of like, how our past comes back to us and how it affects on us, and how we never are completely free from where we come from, even though we like to think so. So I think this is also very, very usable in certain situations. And for us Finns, this is absolutely mandatory. In the beginning, there was the swamp, the hoe, and Jussi. If I'd said this in Finnish, it's kind of already too boring. It doesn't work very well. But if you're like foreign entrepreneur working with Finnish investor or Finnish companies, then you come with this. We have the swamp and the hoe and my company. So that might work really well. So this is my free multi-million tips on public speaking for you.
I think that here also the rhythm, if you listen to the speakers, public speakers, they rhythm their story. Oftentimes in the diplomatic speech, what we do is that we start with a lot of the stories, but when we're recognizing everybody who is in the room or in the audience in general, and then ladies and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen, or your excellencies, etc., etc. And that is the kind of the way you allow people to kind of understand that now I'm moving to another story, or other part of my speech, or other fact. So that's a kind of technique. We didn't want to go in this lecture too much of the techniques. How do you do this in a multicultural environment? But of course, we always have a lot of things to say. And we have the most important things to say, and I have the most important things to say. But the point is that maybe the audience doesn't feel that my thing is the most important things to say. So that's why it is important that you rhyme it. And important that you use some kind of, you can use also different kinds of ways. If it is not quotes only, you can use videos or other visual methods to make your point. Like Salla said, that how do you make the audience brain to kind of see what you are actually speaking? That's what it is all about, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, actually, and there's also when it comes to concrete tips on speech writing, in journalism there's this thing we call Wall Street Journal structure, which means you often see it in features, in feature journalism, in long stories, in the press and internet, where it starts with a story, and then it takes you somewhere else, like a very concrete thing, somebody doing something and something happens, and then it takes you to a more bigger issue in the world, and then in the end you get back to your little story. This is also a very handy and interesting way to construct a speech if it's in case it's not too long. I mean, if you're a foreigner living in Finland, you could start, when I moved to Finland, I didn't understand why nobody said hi to me in the house elevator. And then you come up with your story where you've developed this great application to meet your neighbors, and then in the very end you tell, and then now Matti, my neighbor, he even says hello to me. So you can use the different storytelling techniques. They are all over the place, but the story has to be unique and it has to be yours. So here we get to the part that we base everything upon. We like to think that we are rational. We like to think that the decisions we make are based on, whatever side of our brain, that they are rational decisions and we're rational creatures. That is not true. Every decision we make, especially when it comes to, buying something, investing on something, going somewhere, those are deep emotional decisions. So unless you are able to touch the person you're talking to on the level of emotion, your speech is not gonna meet its goal. Yes, Päivi.
Hence, you need to know your audience. So oftentimes, if you look at whom we consider being the important speakers, they are normally speaking to their own political environment. Microphones. So they're speaking oftentimes to their own political environment. So they know how they feel the pulse of what is going on up there, or in audience. But now we are talking about multicultural, historical, political audience. So emotions are extremely important. But how do I touch them? And that is a very difficult thing to say. How do you get in there? And as you can see now, what is happening tomorrow? Tomorrow happens one thing for whole world, is the American elections. And if you look at how these two candidates have tried to reach out to the multicultural United States, with a good or bad, a lot of things are on emotion. So, and that is not that easy, because we feel based on our cultural identities and our backgrounds and what have you. So I think that more, and hence, oftentimes, these days, a lot of people prefer to forget the facts and create fairy tales. And so when we say the practice and come up with the facts, we do realize that emotion is the big part of the story. However, one needs to realize that why is it done? And why do I want to use your emotions to get my message through? Because that's why I'm doing it. If my message is that vote for me, and I'm ready to use whatever fairy tales out there. And it's not only United States, by the way, it happens to be that the elections are tomorrow. We are equally capable of doing that in Finland or any country if you have that story. And that's why I wanted to say that these stories are so powerful, because you bring the people to that my reality, my world, where you can kind of start seeing that this is happening. So I think that this is very, very important part, and especially for people like our audience who are looking at the marketing and looking at the business concepts. Like Salla said, you sell nothing without emotions.
Also, I promised to tell you some examples of dealing with failure, and that's, I think, the emotion part is a good one to go there. I'm giving you two stories how I totally failed. 17 years ago, I was in Kazakhstan. I was working for Canadian organization. I was their hub in Central Asia, and we had this wonderful project which we were training free expression activists and people, and then we organized a big press conference, and all the media would come. We were in Almaty, which is actually a city of over 1 million people, and we had all the big important media. And this was still, TV cameras are still big. Not all of them, but you still see the huge cameras. But at that time, all the cameras were huge, So I'm there, and I'm the main speaker because I'm in charge for the project. And I walked towards the podium where I was supposed to speak, and I stumble in the cord of these TV cameras, and I fall. And when you're like lying on your stomach in front of TV cameras, it's kind of hard to gather yourself and go and do what you're supposed to do. But I did it, and afterwards, I don't know if it was cultural of what it was, but nobody ever said anything about it. Nobody seemed to pay attention to it. I managed to do the press conference okay. It wasn't the best one ever, but it wasn't bad either. So what I thought that probably it was just so embarrassing for everyone that people just preferred to forget it and move on. So also this is with failure. The problem with failure is that it makes you ashamed of the other person. You feel uncomfortable. You want the other person to sort of like get out of the situation and get on. And that's why, because pity is a very negative emotion, so it can easily turn into a negative sort of like spiral towards you. But I think you should just try and turn it the upside down. That just feel sympathy for me, but no pity. I'm fine. I fell. Okay, sorry. And I've done a similar. I didn't fall, but I froze, and that was like literally last year. And I was speaking at the House of Estates, which is this big fancy building in downtown Helsinki, and we were publishing a big report on Russia. That was published a project by 3 ministries, like all the main ministries in Finland, and I was in charge of one of the parts of this big report, and the whole defense forces, all the important military persons were there. And I had everything prepared, and I go to the podium in this fancy, important historical building, and I freeze. And I'm like a fish, like trying to gasp air. But luckily, since I've done this so many times, so I knew that I'm just gonna have to get the words out of me. And I got them out of me one by one, slowly and in a very weird rhythm. And just went to my place. And afterwards I asked my childhood friend who happened to be there, I said, "Did you notice that I totally froze?" And she said, "No." So either she lied or I fake really well. But this happens to everyone, I promise. You're gonna fail, if you're not gonna fall, you're gonna do something else very embarrassing. Just take it as a part of the process.
And I think that you say that's the most important word, fake it. Fake it until you make it. That's the whole thing. Once you are in front of the cameras or front of the people, and that's why I said go to the theater, or like Salla was saying, stand-up comics are the best teachers for this kind of thing. I need to add another thing, sorry Salla, for this, is that another thing is language. We need to realize that we are not here speaking our mother tongue now. And oftentimes we are all this most popular language, this badly spoken English. And oftentimes what happens is that we don't pronounce things the way originally they are meant to be pronounced. So we might not understand each other. And I think that this is another area where you need to kind of. I'm sitting in Australia. First time I'm meeting my host mother, and she asked me, "Would you like to come with me to the shop?" And I brightly look at her and say, "Mom, I'd rather shit in your car." So she kind of looks at me and said, "Baby, be a little careful with your S's. We know that in Finland you only have one and da-da-da." But this type of things that you go in front of the hundreds of people and you all of a sudden, "I'm only shitting here," is not exactly the kind of the type of thing what you would like to find yourself. But and hence the emotions sometimes is also very difficult to appeal to when you don't find those right words.
Yes. So, I mean, we're reaching the end. We're running out of time. I mean, but I think the main point is here. Tell your story. Your story will be interesting, even if you think it isn't. Write it down. Write down your story. Write quotes. Write funny things that come to your mind. And based on those, you can build a funny, interesting, engaging speech on basically virtually anything. Also, when it comes, I mean, I don't know if this is relevant for this audience, because you guys are entrepreneurs and you're international, you've experienced. But especially here in Finland, we tend to spend a lot of time thinking, what do other people think of us? And I'm telling you, other people are spending their time thinking of what other people think of them. So they have no time to think of you. Just go and give your speeches, and if it doesn't go well, I mean, the universe is not going to stop. So just give it a try, and you can become as great as you want.
So we challenged ourselves. We did exactly this, what we are saying. We were telling you stories. So that was our way of now kind of give that tip or that idea how it is done, is that we try to share our own stories with you and show that how little stories can make the difference. So.
And finally, we had a video that we're probably not gonna show, But it has to do with the elections tomorrow. It's just a very beautifully written speech. It's written, of course, by American spin doctors, so it appeals to your emotions, and it includes a beautiful, talented person. But that's I think, demonstrates really well how personal becomes general, and how it can appeal you and make you act. So if you have time and possibility, please do take a look at this video. But I think we're saying thank you for being with us, and we're very happy and proud to be talking to you. And if there's any questions, we really have a couple of minutes for them.
Yes, thank you very much for Metropolitan to inviting us, and Anu and the team. Thank you very much for all the work you have done behind the scenes. Very nice.
Great.
Okay, good.
I have a question. Do you have an exercise or exercises which you could implement to your day-to-day life, which would improve your, not only just your public speaking, but also your normal interactive speaking with individuals, which are beneficial for, being with friends or when you're in interviews?
Go ahead.
Exercises. That's a good question. When I was on this Rotary Peace Fellowship, and we did a lot of work on mediation, how to mitigate conflicts and how to work with conflicts. We would do a lot of these exercises. So where I would go is that, because when it comes to solving crisis or a war, I mean, what you have to engage are the emotions. But when it comes to everyday life, I'm not sure.
I think that actually you do know. One way to deal with this is to hang around with children. So you need to kind of explain what you see in a very different ways, and you realize that how difficult it is and how easy it is. So I honestly believe that my speaking skills are improving more I am with children and trying to tell them how the world functions. So I think that's the best way. Another thing is what is also is you have your family dinner, like we all have. Stand up and speak. Expect that your brother is doing the same. Ask your son to do the same. So that's the practical, like I said. Practice, practice, practice. These are the everyday things that happens. You can speak to your mom, you can speak to your best friend, or you go out for beer tonight with your friends to Juvanen here, and you go and stand up and say, hey, I would like to tell you about today we heard from Salla and Päivi about this. What do you like? And open up the discussion. So you see what I mean? You have constantly opportunities, what you would like to do. But the point is that you don't take them because nobody has ever done it. It's not nice. The shame. You're ashamed. What? Shame for what? With your mom and dad and your brothers?
But don't you have that tradition in your family, though? That
yeah,
you speak?
Yes.
We don't, unless we're really drunk, which is often, though.
Yeah, but that helps. It always helps. But the point is that yes, we have the tradition that we speak. And you can establish such a tradition in your family. But I honestly also believe that it is, I'm known in my friendship circles that I stand up and I speak. To say thank you, or whatever I have in my mind. So I think those are the opportunities. Like I said, never say no.
Yeah, and one practical tip is hanging out with Georgians, because they speak all the time.
Yeah, it's often I find myself in situations where I think like, oh, it would be really nice to say something, but you kind of have to do that standing up. So maybe I should start taking that opportunity now that when I have that feeling,
just go ahead.
Just do it. Good.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I have a little story as well. I was doing an interview recently, and I was supposed to tell how Metes has been focusing on equality when it comes to entrepreneurship. And of course, I totally forgot the word equality. So the interview was in English, but I also forgot what it is in Finnish. So I just completely like my brain was just shutting down, and I don't know, maybe it happens to everyone, but what's like the what can I do in that situation? I kind of laughed it off, but I just wanted to kick myself and, go home.
But didn't you find a way to get around it?
Well, luckily this wasn't a live thing.
Yeah.
So I did ask the crew, like, what's the word where you are all the same? And then they said it to me 3 times. So I forgot it 3 times. So
That's I think that's a brilliant story. And actually, if you forgot a word in a foreign language, then you just said, I forgot the word. You can say that, and you can also say, I'm in horror. I'm really not comfortable in this situation, and I forget my main word. Because that's actually what happened. Usually honesty helps, and being yourself really helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe you can make a joke out of it. Maybe you can make a joke out of it in terms of explaining that what is it that when we are, what we have. So you see what I mean, is that it's not so serious.
And that's also, I
important thing.
would call that a good start for a public speak. Your public speech could be themed, the day I forgot what equality is. And then you could move on with the issues that are important to you. Start with that story and then move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Excellent idea.
Any other questions? Is there something in the stream coming questions?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be with you.
Have a good night.